The conference room stretched for almost half a mile, carved from pure crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Ambassador Chen Wei sat at the curved table, surrounded by creatures from 47 different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few were just floating clouds of gas inside containment suits. Chen had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Coalition for 3 years now, but he still felt like the new kid at school. High Commander Zekthar stood at the center podium. The Krythax warrior was 9 feet tall, covered in thick red armor that was actually his skin. 4 arms crossed over his massive chest as he spoke in a voice that rumbled like thunder. The Krythax Empire has claimed the Outer Rim territories. They are ours by right of conquest. Zekthar's translator device turned his growls into words everyone could understand. Any species that challenges us will face us in honorable combat. Counselor Miraesh floated up from her seat. The Luminar was beautiful and terrible at the same time, made of pure light, held together by some force Chen didn't understand. Her voice sounded like bells. Commander Zekthar, those territories belong to no one. Innocent people live there, families, children. The Coalition exists to prevent exactly this kind of aggression. Zekthar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. The Luminar speak of peace because they cannot fight. You are light and air. You have no warriors. General Thorvax rose next. The Korthan was almost as big as Zekthar, with 4 powerful arms and gray stone-like skin. The Korthan have warriors. We are strong. We crush our enemies with superior force, but we follow Coalition law. You should do the same, Zekthar. And what of the humans? Zekthar turned his glowing red eyes toward Chen. The newest species. You have been part of this coalition for only 3 of your Earth years. You come from a small blue world with primitive technology. Tell me, Ambassador Chen, does your species even have warriors? Chen felt every eye in the room turn toward him. He had expected this. The Krythax had been pushing boundaries for months, testing the Coalition's resolve. They saw humans as weak because Earth had joined the Coalition through diplomacy, not military strength. We have soldiers, Chen said calmly, and we have weapons. Zekthar moved closer, his heavy footsteps shaking the floor. Every species has soldiers, every child has weapons. But tell me, human. He leaned down, his face level with Chen's. How does your primitive species kill? The room went silent. In the 3 years since first contact, humanity had shared technology, culture, and art with the galaxy. But they had never gone to war, not as part of the Coalition. The other species knew humans had fought among themselves in the past, but those records were vague. Earth had been unified for almost 50 years when the Coalition found them. Chen stood up slowly. He was small compared to most beings in the room, barely 6 feet tall. He wore a simple gray suit with Earth's flag on the shoulder, a blue marble against black space. You want to know how humans kill? Chen asked quietly. Yes. Zekthar crossed all 4 arms again. The Krythax kill with honor. Face to face, warrior to warrior. The Vexians swarm their enemies with millions of soldiers. The Korthan use overwhelming strength. Every species has their way of war. So tell us, little human, what is your way? Chen looked around the room. He saw the Vexian hive mind cluster, thousands of small insect creatures that thought as one. He saw the crystalline shardborn, who could control technology with their minds. He saw the Tenthari, whose poison could drop a full-grown Korthan in seconds. Every species had evolved one specific way to fight, one perfect strategy that worked for their biology and culture. Humans were different. We kill gradually, Chen said. The words hung in the air. Or quickly, depending on what the situation requires. Zekthar's eyes narrowed. That is not an answer. You cannot do both. Choose one. I don't need to choose, Chen replied. That's the point. Mira Esh's light pulsed with confusion. Ambassador Chen, I'm afraid I don't understand. How can a species fight in two completely opposite ways? Chen turned to face the full council. The Krythax have honor combat because their culture values individual strength. The Vexian swarm because they are a hive mind with billions of bodies. The Korthan use direct force because they are incredibly strong. Each of you fights the way your biology and evolution designed you to fight. Yes, General Thorvax said. That is natural. So what is the human way? Adaptation, Chen said simply. On Earth, we don't have the thickest armor or the most poison or the strongest bodies. We don't have millions of bodies sharing one mind. What we have is the ability to change our approach based on what we face. Zekthar snorted. So you have no true warrior culture. You are generalists, weak at everything, good at nothing. Perhaps, Chen said with a slight smile. Or perhaps we're good at everything because we had to be. The Vexian hive spoke through its central cluster. Explain this concept. How does one species master multiple forms of warfare? Chen thought carefully about his next words. The Krythax evolved on a world with large predators. You developed honor combat to establish hierarchy and strength. The Vexian evolved in underground colonies where numbers meant survival. Every species here evolved fighting one type of enemy or solving one type of problem. He paused. Humans evolved fighting other humans. The room shifted. Creatures leaned forward or back. Translation devices crackled as they processed the implications. For 10,000 years we fought ourselves, Chen continued. Desert tribes fought forest tribes. Islands fought continents. Different weapons, different terrain, different strategies. We learned to fight in jungles and tundras, on oceans and in the sky, with spears and with nuclear weapons, fast wars and slow wars, direct assault and invisible sabotage. Barbaric, Zekthar said, but his voice had less confidence than before. Maybe, Chen agreed, but effective. When you ask how humans kill, I can't give you one answer because we have thousands of answers. We choose the method that works best for each situation. You still have not explained these words, Mira Esh said gently. Gradually or quickly? What do they mean? Chen looked directly at Zekthar. If I need to stop an enemy gradually, I don't fight them at all. I take away their resources. I turn their allies against them. I make them doubt themselves. I wait patiently for months or years until they collapse from within. No battles, no honor duels, just slow, methodical pressure until they can't fight anymore. Zekthar's skin darkened with anger. That is not warfare. That is cowardice. Call it what you want, Chen said. But if I need to stop an enemy quickly, I do the opposite. I hit hard, fast, and with overwhelming force. I strike before they know I'm there. I use every weapon and every advantage to end the fight in hours, not months. Complete victory before the enemy can respond. The silence in the room was absolute. No species can do both, General Thorvax said slowly. The mindset required, the training, the culture, they are opposites. For you, maybe, Chen said. For us, they're just options. Zekthar stared at the human ambassador for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back to his position. The Krythax Empire will consider this discussion. But words are not proof. Until humans demonstrate this supposed flexibility, you are still just diplomats playing at war. The council session ended shortly after. As the delegates filed out, Chen noticed many of them watching him with new expressions. Not respect, not fear, but something else. Uncertainty. In a galaxy where every species was predictable, humanity had just declared itself unpredictable. Chen gathered his papers and headed for the exit. Counselor Mira Esh floated alongside him. Ambassador, she said softly, I hope your species never has to prove those claims. So do I, Chen replied honestly. But he knew they would. The Krythax wouldn't stop with words. They never did. And soon, the galaxy would learn that when a human said they could kill gradually or quickly, they meant it. Captain Sarah Okonkwo floated in zero gravity, watching the displays that covered every wall of the observation deck. The HCSF Shadow Wind was designed for stealth, built with technology that made it almost invisible to sensors. For 3 months, they had been watching the Krythax fleet from a distance of 50,000 miles. "Movement on the command ship," Lieutenant Torres said from his station. "Admiral Kelvash is executing another officer." Sarah pulled herself to his screen. The Krythax admiral was massive even by his species standards, and through the long-range cameras, they could see him tear one of his own commanders apart with his bare hands. The body floated away into space. "That's the 5th one this week," Torres noted. He was the ship's psychological warfare specialist, and he watched the Krythax with the intensity of a scientist studying insects. "The Admiral is breaking down faster than we predicted." "Good," Sarah said without emotion. "Update the report for command. Let them know the gradual approach is working ahead of schedule." It had started 3 months ago, right after the coalition meeting. The Krythax Empire had ignored Ambassador Chen's warnings and attacked a mining colony in the Outer Rim. 17 species had been killed in the raid. The coalition had debated for days about how to respond. The Korthan wanted to meet the Krythax head-on with their powerful battle fleets. The Vexian suggested overwhelming them with swarm ships. The Luminar begged for more diplomatic talks. Everyone had a solution that matched their own fighting style. Then the humans made their proposal. "Let us handle it," Chen had said, "but our way. No battles, no fleet engagements. Just give us 3 months." The coalition had been skeptical, but they agreed. They had nothing to lose. If the humans failed, they could still send in conventional forces. So Sarah and her crew went to work. Phase 1 had been information warfare. The Krythax communicated using quantum channels that they thought were completely secure. It took human computers less than 2 weeks to break the encryption. After that, every message, every order, every private conversation between Krythax officers was an open book. But the humans didn't just read the messages. They changed them. Small changes at first. A supply shipment that was supposed to arrive on Tuesday would mysteriously be delayed until Thursday. Orders to patrol Sector 7 would be quietly altered to Sector 9. Nothing obvious. Nothing that would alert the Krythax that they had been compromised. The Admiral started to notice problems. Ships were in the wrong places. Supplies weren't arriving. Patrols missed each other. He blamed incompetent officers and executed them, which only made the problem worse because now he had fewer experienced leaders. "Sir, the next phase is ready to deploy," Torres said. "Are we authorized?" Sarah checked her orders. Ambassador Chen had given them complete freedom to operate, as long as they didn't kill anyone directly. The goal was to make the Krythax too weak to fight without firing a single shot. "Deploy Phase 2, Sarah ordered. Phase 2 was economic strangulation. The Krythax Empire needed resources from neutral trading species to keep their fleet running. Fuel, food, ammunition, repair materials. They got these supplies through a network of merchants who didn't care about politics, only profit. The humans cared about profit too. They just offered more of it. Sarah's sister ship, the HCSF Silent Prayer, had been visiting every trading hub in neutral space. They carried cargo holds full of precious metals, rare materials, and advanced technology. They made a simple offer to every merchant: stop trading with the Krythax, and humanity would replace all their lost profits, plus 20%. Most merchants took the deal immediately. The few who didn't found their ships suffering mysterious mechanical failures, engines that wouldn't start, navigation systems that glitched, cargo holds that developed leaks. Nothing deadly, just expensive and annoying. After a month, almost no one was willing to trade with the Krythax anymore. "Fuel supplies on the command ship are down to 40%, Torres reported. Food stores at 60%, ammunition at 75%. They're rationing everything. Admiral Kelvash had sent angry messages to the trading guilds, demanding to know why shipments had stopped. The merchants told him the truth. The humans were paying better. The admiral had raged and threatened, but threats don't fill empty fuel tanks. He executed 2 more officers for failing to secure supplies. Beginning Phase 3, Torres said. This was Sarah's least favorite part. Phase 3 was psychological warfare, and it felt dirty even though no one got physically hurt. The humans had recorded every communication from the Krythax fleet. They knew which officers were loyal, which ones were ambitious, and which ones were starting to doubt their admiral. They knew who was homesick, who was afraid, and who was angry about the rationing, and they used that knowledge like a weapon. Messages started appearing on Krythax personal devices. Not obvious broadcasts, but quiet, private notes that seemed to come from other Krythax officers. The admiral is losing his mind. He'll get us all killed. I heard command is planning to replace him. They think he's incompetent. My family is starving back home while we waste fuel out here for nothing. None of the messages said anything that wasn't already true. The admiral was losing control. The fleet was low on supplies. Krythax families back home were suffering because the Empire had spent all its resources on military expansion. The humans just made sure everyone knew it. The Krythax started to turn on each other. Officers who were already stressed began to suspect their colleagues of treason. Arguments broke out. Some ships stopped following orders, saying they needed to return home to check on their families. Admiral Kelvash executed 3 more officers for spreading dissent. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Coalition Command, the communications officer reported. General Thorvax wants a status update. Sarah opened the channel. The big Corthan's face appeared on screen, looking confused and somewhat disturbed. Captain Okonkwo, Thorvax said, I have been reviewing your reports. In 3 months, you have neutralized a significant portion of the Krythax fleet's combat effectiveness. But according to my data, you have not fired a single weapon. That's correct, General, Sarah replied. We haven't needed to. I do not understand this method of warfare, Thorvax admitted. The Krythax fleet is still there. Their ships are functional. Their weapons work. But you say they are defeated? Not defeated yet, Sarah corrected. Weakened, divided, demoralized. Give us 2 more weeks and they'll collapse from within. Thorvax was quiet for a moment. This seems cruel, Captain. More cruel than simply destroying them in battle. Sarah had thought about that a lot over the past 3 months. With respect, General, how many casualties would a direct battle cause? The Krythax fleet has approximately 200,000 warriors. A conventional assault would likely kill half of them. Perhaps 75,000 casualties on our side as well. Our way will kill no one, Sarah said. We're not attacking their bodies. We're attacking their ability and will to fight. When this is over, those 200,000 warriors will go home to their families, alive. But damaged in their minds, Thorvax observed. Is that truly better? I don't know, Sarah admitted. But it's what we were ordered to do. End the threat gradually. Make them too weak to continue. Do it without causing mass casualties. Thorvax nodded slowly. The other coalition species are disturbed by your methods. The Luminar say it is torture. The Vexians say it is inefficient. The Corthans say it is dishonorable. What do the Krythax say? Sarah asked. Nothing. Admiral Kelvash has stopped responding to all communications. Sarah checked her displays. The Krythax command ship was still there, floating in the darkness of space. But the fleet around it was scattered, disorganized. Half the ships were running on reserve power to conserve fuel. Fights were breaking out on multiple vessels. 2 weeks, General, Sarah repeated. Then this will be over. Without a battle, Thorvax said, shaking his head. Without honor, without glory, just pressure, patience, psychological manipulation. Gradually, Sarah said. That's what Ambassador Chen promised. We break their will before we break their bodies. It saves lives. It does, Thorvax agreed. But Captain, I find myself glad that humanity is our ally and not our enemy. This method of warfare is terrifying precisely because it is so quiet. After the transmission ended, Torres looked up from his station. Captain, do you think the general is right? Is this more cruel than just fighting them? Sarah thought about the question. She thought about Admiral Kelvash, who had gone from a proud warrior to a paranoid killer of his own officers. She thought about the Krythax warriors who were now scared, hungry, and doubting everything they believed in. Then she thought about the alternative. Massive space battles, hundreds of thousands dead, ships torn apart, warriors floating frozen in space. I don't know if it's more cruel, she finally said, but I know it's more effective, and I know more people survive. Maybe that's enough. Torres nodded and went back to his work. On the screens, Admiral Kelvash executed another officer. The Krythax fleet continued to tear itself apart from the inside. No human weapons had been fired. No human ships had been revealed. The war was invisible, psychological, economic. It was gradual, methodical, patient, and it was working. 14 days later, Admiral Kelvash sent a message to Coalition Command. The Krythax fleet was withdrawing from the Outer Rim. They had lost too many officers to internal strife. They had insufficient supplies to continue operations. Morale was too low for combat. They surrendered without a battle. Ambassador Chen sent a message to Captain Okonkwo. Well done. Return to base. Sarah looked at her crew. For 3 months, they had waged war without violence. They had defeated an enemy without killing them. They had shown the galaxy what humans meant by gradually, but she knew this was only half the answer. The Krythax had learned what happens when humans take their time. Soon, someone would learn what happens when humans decide to move quickly, and Sarah suspected that lesson would be far more terrible. The alert came at 0300 hours, station time. Colonel James Davidson was asleep in his quarters when every light in the base turned red and the sirens started screaming. He was dressed and in the command center within 90 seconds. Report, he barked, still fastening his tactical vest. Krythax landing force on Helios 7th, the watch officer said, pulling up displays. Approximately 10,000 warriors. They bypassed our orbital defenses using some kind of stealth technology. Landed 30 minutes ago near New Providence Colony. James felt ice in his stomach. New Providence had 40,000 civilians, mostly Luminar families with some Vexian and a few human colonists. All non-military, all defenseless. Where's the Coalition fleet? 6 hours away, minimum. The Korthan battle group is the closest, but General Thorvax says they need at least 8 hours to mobilize for a rescue operation. What Coalition forces are on the ground? 200 Marines, sir. Our rapid response team. That's it. James pulled up the tactical display. 10,000 Krythax warriors, trained and armored against 200 human Marines, and 40,000 civilians caught in between. Get me Governor Prex, he ordered. The Luminar governor's face appeared on screen. Her light was flickering with fear. Colonel Davidson, please, you must evacuate the civilians. The Krythax are moving toward the city. They'll be here in hours. How long would evacuation take? 3 days minimum. We don't have enough transport ships. You don't have 3 days, James said flatly. You probably don't have 3 hours. The Krythax don't take prisoners. Then what can we do? Governor Prex's voice was breaking. The Coalition forces are too far away. You only have 200 soldiers. This is impossible. James looked at his tactical officer. Sergeant Yuki Tanaka had served with him for 8 years. She was already pulling up deployment options, her fingers flying across the controls. Governor, James said carefully, I need you to get every civilian into the shelters. Underground, now. Don't wait. Don't pack. Just run. Colonel, that won't save them if the Krythax— Do it, James interrupted. And trust me, we'll handle the Krythax. He closed the channel before she could argue. Tanaka, give me options. The sergeant brought up a three-dimensional battle map. The Krythax force was spread across the landing zone, about 20 miles from the city. They were organized in traditional Krythax formation, 3 main groups with scouts ranging ahead. We can't fight them directly, Tanaka said. 10,000 against 200. Even with our tech advantage, we'd be overrun in minutes. I'm not planning to fight them directly, James said. He opened a channel to Orbital Command. This is Colonel Davidson. I'm requesting authorization for immediate tactical response. Full spectrum engagement. There was a pause. Then Ambassador Chen's voice came through. Colonel, be aware that the entire coalition is watching. Whatever you do in the next few hours will define how they see humanity. Choose wisely. Understood, sir. But those civilians need help now, not in 8 hours. Then you have full authorization, Chen said. Show them what quickly means. James turned to his team. Battle stations. We're going loud. The first phase took 6 minutes. Human orbital platforms repositioned above the Krythax landing zone. They weren't weapons platforms. Officially, they were communications satellites. But every human satellite had dual purposes. From orbit, tungsten rods dropped toward the planet. They were just metal cylinders, no explosives, no warheads, but they fell from space at speeds that turned them into kinetic missiles. When they hit with the force of tactical nuclear weapons. The Krythax scouts never knew what killed them. Pillars of fire erupted across the landing zone, each strike placed with surgical precision. The tungsten rods hit supply dumps, command posts, and communication arrays. In 6 minutes, the Krythax force lost their supplies, their leadership structure, and their ability to coordinate. War Chief Grathkor survived because he was in his personal combat suit, which could withstand orbital strikes. But when he emerged from his crater, half his army was gone and the other half was scattered and confused. Second phase, James ordered. The drones came next. Hundreds of them, each no bigger than a human hand, swarming down from the sky like angry insects. They carried no weapons. They didn't need to. They carried cameras and transmitters, and they marked every single Krythax warrior with laser designators. All targets acquired, Tanaka reported. 4,300 enemy combatants remaining. Uploading coordinates to fire control. Execute, James said. The human Marines didn't need to see the enemy to kill them. Their powered armor suits were connected to the targeting network. Every Marine could see every enemy, no matter where they were hiding. Distance didn't matter. Cover didn't matter. The armor's weapons systems could hit targets 3 miles away with perfect accuracy. The Krythax warriors died without ever seeing their attackers. Precision rifle fire from positions they couldn't locate. Guided micro-missiles that came from nowhere. The humans moved through the terrain like ghosts, their suits' stealth systems making them almost invisible. War Chief Grathkor tried to rally his warriors, but how do you rally against an enemy you can't find? The Krythax Honor Code demanded face-to-face combat, warrior against warrior. But the humans weren't giving them that choice. Third phase, James said. He was watching from the command center, but part of him wanted to be on the ground with his Marines. This kind of warfare felt cold, clinical, necessary but not honorable. Then he thought about the 40,000 civilians and stopped caring about honor. Human gunships dropped from orbit, their engines screaming as they fell through the atmosphere. They were small, fast, and covered in weapons. They didn't engage in dogfights because there was no enemy air support. They just hunted. The Krythax warriors who had survived the orbital strikes and the sniper fire now found themselves facing gunships that could see through walls and hit them with missiles that turned corners. War Chief Grathkor watched his army disintegrate around him. He tried to retreat, but the humans had already cut off every escape route. Drones blocked the paths back to the landing ships. Marines held every choke point. The Krythax were surrounded by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. 6 hours after the attack began, it was over. Governor Prex emerged from the shelters with her civilians. They found New Providence City completely intact. No damage to buildings, no civilian casualties. The battle had happened 20 miles away, and the civilians had never seen it. What they did see were Krythax warriors surrendering to human Marines. Thousands of them, disarmed and organized into neat rows. War Chief Grathkor sat on the ground, his armor stripped away, his pride shattered. Colonel Davidson stood in front of him. The human was small compared to the Krythax commander, but right now it didn't matter. "Your attack failed," James said simply. "You did not fight with honor," Grathkor said through his translator. His voice was hollow. "You did not face us. You killed from the sky, from the shadows, from machines. This is not warfare." "You attacked civilians," James replied. 40,000 defenseless people. You want to talk about honor?" Grathkor had no answer. General Thorvax arrived 8 hours later with his coalition fleet ready to defend the colony. Instead, he found the battle already over. He walked through the rows of Krythax prisoners, his face unreadable. "Colonel Davidson," he finally said, "my fleet of 50 ships was coming to save this colony. You did it with 200 soldiers." "We had some advantages," James said. "Advantages." Thorvax looked at the devastation in the Krythax landing zone, then back at the untouched city. "In 18 hours, you neutralized a force 50 times your size. 0 civilian casualties. Minimal infrastructure damage. The Krythax never even reached the city." "That was the plan, sir." 3 months ago, your species defeated a Krythax fleet without firing a shot," Thorvax continued. "You called that gradually. Today, you defeated a Krythax army in less than a day. You call this quickly?" "Yes, sir." Thorvax was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to his communication officer. "Send a message to Coalition Command. Tell them humanity has demonstrated both methodologies they claimed, and tell them I finally understand why we should never fight humans." The message went out across the coalition. Species that had doubted human capabilities now saw the proof. The Luminar were grateful but disturbed. The Vexian were analyzing the tactics. The Korthan were reconsidering their entire military doctrine. Ambassador Chen received reports from multiple species ambassadors. They all asked the same question. If humans can fight this way, why did they join the coalition? Why didn't they just conquer us? Chen's answer was always the same. Because we choose not to. On Helios 7th, Colonel Davidson stood in the command center and watched his Marines process the prisoners. Each Krythax would be treated fairly, given medical care, and eventually returned home. No torture, no executions, no revenge. Sergeant Tanaka approached him. "Sir, the coalition observers want to know how we moved so fast. How we coordinated everything, how we wiped out an entire army in 18 hours. James thought about the decades of training, the technology developed through countless wars, the doctrine written in blood through human history. Fast wars, blitzkrieg, shock and awe, decisive victory through overwhelming force applied at maximum speed. "Tell them it's what we do," he said simply. "When humans need to move fast, we move very fast. And when they ask why we didn't use this approach against the first Krythax fleet, why we spent 3 months on psychological warfare instead of just hitting them like this." James smiled slightly. "Tell them that's the point. We choose the method that fits the situation, gradually when we have time, quickly when we don't. The enemy doesn't get to decide how we fight." Tanaka nodded. "That's going to scare a lot of species, sir." "Good," James said. Fear keeps people honest, and hopefully, it keeps them from making the same mistake the Krythax did. He looked out at the setting sun on Helios VII. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species were learning that humans had kept their promise. They could kill gradually or quickly. The question now was whether anyone would be stupid enough to test them again. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition began with a surprise. The Krythax Empire sent a delegation to sue for peace. High Commander Zekthar was not among them. He had been removed from command after the disasters at both the Outer Rim Fleet and Helios VII. The new Krythax representative was younger, smaller, and far more humble. Her name was Kreshva, and she spoke with none of Zekthar's arrogance. The Krythax Empire formally withdraws all territorial claims in disputed space, she said, her four arms spread in a gesture of submission. We acknowledge that we cannot win against the coalition forces. Specifically, we cannot win against humanity. The council chamber was packed. Every species had sent their full diplomatic teams. They all wanted to understand what had happened in the past 4 months. Ambassador Chen Wei sat calmly in his seat, aware that every eye in the room was on him. He had known this meeting would come. The question was what the coalition would do with the information. General Thorvax stood first. I have fought in wars for 40 standard years, he said slowly. I have seen the Vexian swarm consume entire battle groups. I have witnessed the Korthan war machines crush armies. I have observed the Tenthari poison clouds that kill in seconds. But I have never, in all my years, seen anything like what the humans did. Counselor Mira Esh floated up, her light pulsing with agitation. What they did was cruel. The psychological warfare against the Krythax fleet, breaking minds instead of bodies. How is that more ethical than simple combat? Because everyone lived, Chen said quietly. Admiral Kelvash and his crews are back home with their families. Damaged, yes. Changed, yes. But alive. Would a fleet battle have been kinder? And what about Helios VII? Demanded a Vexian speaker. That was not psychological warfare. That was annihilation. That was speed, Chen corrected. 10,000 Krythax warriors threatened 40,000 civilians. We had 18 hours. We used them efficiently. Efficiently, General Thorvax repeated. You destroyed an army 50 times your size in 18 hours with almost no damage to the colony. Colonel Davidson's force suffered 0 casualties. The Krythax lost 6,300 warriors. How is that even possible? Training, Chen said. Technology, tactics, coordination. We've been developing these methods for a long time. How long? Asked a crystalline shard-born delegate. Humans have been in space for barely a century. You've been part of the coalition for only 3 years. Where did you learn to fight like this? Chen took a deep breath. He had prepared for this question. We learned from fighting ourselves. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Translation devices crackled as species tried to understand the concept. Explain, Thorvax commanded. Every species here evolved to fight one type of enemy, Chen began. The Krythax fought large predators, so they developed honor combat. The Vexian fought for underground territory, so they developed swarm tactics. The Korthan had enormous strength, so they developed direct assault doctrines. Each of you fought the enemies your world gave you. He paused. Earth gave us a different enemy. Other humans. Elder historian Kethvin rose from his seat in the back of the chamber. The ancient being was from a species so old that most civilizations considered them myths. His people had been watching the galaxy for over 100,000 years. I would like to share something, Kethvin said in his whispering voice. He moved to the central display and uploaded a file. These are records from our archives. They are 50,000 years old. The display showed ancient images, star maps, pictures of a species that looked remarkably similar to humans. Bipedal, bilateral symmetry, forward-facing eyes. We called them Terrans, Kethvin continued. They appeared in our galaxy approximately 53,000 years ago. They were traders, explorers, scientists. They claimed to come from a small blue world orbiting a yellow star. Chen felt his heart racing. This was new information. Earth had no records from 50,000 years ago. The Terrans were peaceful, Kethvin said. They joined the coalition of that era. They shared technology and culture. Then suddenly they disappeared. Every ship, every colony, every trace of them vanished over the course of a single generation. We never understood why. What does this have to do with humans? Mira-Esh asked. Look at the genetic scans, Kethvin said. He displayed data that compared Terran DNA with human DNA. They are nearly identical. Either humans are descendants of Terrans, or both species evolved from the same source. The chamber was silent. But there is something else, Kethvin continued. Before they disappeared, the Terrans faced a threat. A rival species was expanding aggressively. The Terrans asked us, just as humans did 4 months ago, to let them handle it their way. He showed more images, battle reports. The Terrans defeated their enemy in 2 ways. First, they spent years slowly dismantling the enemy's economy and morale. When that enemy grew desperate and attacked civilians, the Terrans responded with overwhelming force. They ended the war in a matter of days. Chen stared at the reports. The tactics were familiar: psychological warfare, economic pressure, rapid deployment, precision strikes. Everything humanity had done, the Terrans had done 50,000 years earlier. Gradually or quickly, Kethvin said softly, the same words, the same methods, the same species perhaps, returned to the galaxy after a long absence. Why did they leave? Thorvax asked. We never knew, Kethvin admitted. But I believe I understand now. They left because they were too effective, because other species feared them, because being able to fight in every way meant being a threat in every way. The implications hung in the air like poison gas. Chen stood up. With respect, Elder Kethvin, I can't speak to what happened 50,000 years ago, but I can tell you why humans fight the way we do. You asked where we learned. I'll tell you. He activated his own display. It showed Earth, beautiful blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. For 10,000 years of recorded history, humans fought each other, Chen said. We had tribes, nations, empires, all competing for resources on one small world. We developed every kind of warfare because we faced every kind of enemy. Desert warfare, jungle warfare, mountain warfare, naval warfare, aerial warfare, space warfare, guerrilla tactics, siege tactics, mobile tactics, static tactics. Images flashed across the screen. Ancient armies with spears, medieval castles under siege, world wars with millions of soldiers, nuclear weapons, cyber warfare. We learned to fight fast because sometimes speed saved lives, Chen continued. We learned to fight slow because sometimes patience won wars. We learned psychological warfare because sometimes the best victory is one where no one dies. We learned overwhelming force because sometimes you need to end a threat immediately. You learned by killing each other, Mira-Esh said, her voice sad. For 10,000 years. Yes, Chen admitted. We were not peaceful. We were not unified. We fought constantly over land, resources, beliefs, pride. Every war taught us something new. Every conflict added to our understanding of how to fight. And now, asked the Shardborn delegate, now that you have this knowledge, what will you do with it? Chen looked around the chamber. That's why we joined the coalition. For 50 years before first contact, Earth was unified. We had ended our wars. We had put away our weapons. When you found us, we were ready to be something better than what we had been. But you still remember how to kill, Thorvax observed. Yes, Chen said. We remember. Just like you remember how to use your strength. and the Vexian remember how to swarm, and the Krithax remember their honor combat. Every species here is capable of violence. The difference is that we're capable of every kind of violence. And that makes you dangerous, Mira-Esh said. It makes us versatile, Chen corrected. Danger is in the intent, not the capability. Kresheva, the Krithax delegate, stood up. May I speak? The council turned to her in surprise. Enemy delegates usually remained silent during deliberations. The Krithax Empire learned something in these past months, she said carefully. We learned that humans are not weak because they choose diplomacy. They are strong because they choose diplomacy. They have the capability to crush us gradually or quickly, but they chose to minimize casualties. Even our casualties. She paused. Admiral Kelvash lives. War Chief Grathkor lives. Every Krithax warrior captured on Helios 7th has been returned to us alive and unharmed. Humans could have killed them all. They chose not to. That is not weakness. That is strength under control. The council was quiet again. Slowly, species began to understand. The question, Chen said, is not whether humans can fight in multiple ways. We can. The question is whether you trust us to use that capability responsibly, to defend the coalition, not threaten it, to protect the innocent, not prey on them. And if we don't trust you? Asked a small voice from the Luminar delegation. Chen smiled sadly. Then we would be disappointed, but we would understand, and we would leave the coalition peacefully, just as we joined it peacefully. We won't force anyone to accept us. General Thorvax stood up. I have a question for the council. In the past 4 months, have humans done anything that violated coalition law or ethics? The chamber was silent. After a moment, several delegates shook their heads. They warned us they could fight gradually or quickly, Thorvax continued. They demonstrated both. They minimized casualties. They protected civilians. They treated prisoners with respect. They did everything we asked, and they did it better than any of us could have. He turned to Chen. Ambassador, I believe I speak for the Korthan when I say we would be honored to fight beside humanity, not against them. One by one, other species voiced their agreement. The Shardborn, who valued logic, noted that human versatility made them ideal allies. The Vexian, who valued efficiency, praised human tactics. Even some Luminar, despite their pacifist nature, acknowledged that human methods saved lives. By the end of the session, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humans would remain in the coalition. More than that, they would be invited to train coalition forces in their methods. As the session ended, Chen stood with Elder Kethvin. Do you truly believe humans and Terrans are related? Chen asked. I do not know, Kethvin said, but I know this. 50,000 years ago, a species came to this galaxy with the ability to fight in any way necessary. They left because others feared them. Now humanity has returned or evolved independently with the same capabilities. The question is whether we will make the same mistake again. And what do you think? Chen asked. Kethvin's ancient eyes twinkled. I think humanity has learned something the Terrans never did. The most important way to fight is reluctantly, and that makes all the difference. 6 months after the Krithax peace treaty, Ambassador Chen Wei stood in front of 300 students at the new Coalition Military Academy on Earth. The students came from 40 different species, all of them military officers sent to learn what their governments were now calling human doctrine. Chen had been promoted. He was no longer just Earth's ambassador. He was now the Coalition Defense Coordinator, responsible for teaching the galaxy how humans approached warfare. It was strange, he thought, that a species who had fought themselves for 10,000 years was now trusted to teach others how to fight. Welcome to Earth, Chen began. Over the next 6 months, you will learn how humans prepare for war. But more importantly, you will learn why we prepare the way we do. In the front row sat a young Krithax officer named Kresh. He was barely 7 feet tall, small for his species, and his red armor was polished until it shone. 6 months ago, he had been at Helios VII when Colonel Davidson's forces crushed the Krithax invasion. He had surrendered along with thousands of others, expecting to be killed. Instead, the humans had given him medical care, food, and sent him home. The experience had changed him. When his government announced they were sending officers to study at the Human Academy, Kresh volunteered immediately. "Sir?" Kresh raised one of his 4 hands. "May I ask a question?" "Of course," Chen said. "Why do you teach us? We were your enemies. We attacked your colonies. We killed your allies. Why share your knowledge with us?" Chen smiled. "Because war isn't about enemies. It's about threats. The Krithax Empire isn't a threat anymore. Other dangers are out there in the galaxy. We're stronger if we face them together." Kresh sat back down, processing this answer. The human logic was strange, but made sense. Build allies instead of creating more enemies. The first month of training focused on what the instructors called adaptive thinking. Human military academies didn't teach students one way to fight. They taught them how to analyze situations and choose the right approach. "Every battle is different," Colonel Davidson explained to the class during a tactical simulation. "Different terrain, different enemy, different objectives, different time constraints. You must learn to see the situation clearly and respond appropriately." On the screen, a battle scenario played out. An enemy force was besieging a city. The traditional Korthan approach would be to meet them head-on with superior strength. The Vexian approach would be to swarm them with numbers. The Krithax approach would be to challenge their leaders to single combat. "What's the human approach?" asked a Shard-born student. "First, we gather information," Davidson said. "How many enemies? What are their capabilities? How long until the city falls? What resources do we have? Only after we know these answers do we choose our method." He ran 3 different simulations. In the first, the humans had time, so they used gradual methods, cutting supply lines, spreading misinformation, turning the enemy's allies against them. The siege collapsed without a major battle. In the second simulation, time was critical. The humans used rapid deployment, orbital strikes, drone swarms, precision attacks. The enemy was defeated in hours. In the third simulation, both methods were combined. Slow pressure on the enemy's flanks while rapid strikes hit their command structure. "Flexibility," Davidson said. "That's the core of human military doctrine. We don't have one answer. We have many answers, and we pick the one that fits." Kresh found this approach fascinating but also disturbing. Krithax warriors trained their entire lives to master honor combat. It was elegant, pure, a perfect system. But it only worked against enemies who also valued honor combat. Against humans, it had been useless. "Is there no honor in your way of war?" he asked Davidson after class one day. The colonel thought for a moment. "There's honor in protecting the innocent. There's honor in achieving objectives with minimal casualties. There's honor in being strong enough to choose restraint. Those are our honors. They might be different from yours, but they're just as real." The second month focused on technology integration. Human weapons weren't necessarily more advanced than those of other species, but humans had a unique ability to combine different technologies in creative ways. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka taught a class on drone warfare. "Individually, our drones are simple machines," she explained. "But when networked together, they become something greater. Each drone shares information with all the others. They think as a group, like a hive mind, but with the flexibility of individual units." The Vexian students found this familiar, but were amazed at how humans achieved with machines what the Vexian achieved through biology. The third month was psychological warfare. This was the hardest subject for many students to accept. "We call it winning hearts and minds," explained Specialist Marcus Torres. The best victory is when the enemy surrenders without fighting. Not because they're afraid, but because they've been convinced that fighting is pointless. He showed case studies from Earth's history, propaganda campaigns, economic sanctions, information warfare, all the methods that had been used against the first Krythax fleet. "This seems dishonorable," said a Korthan student. "You attack the mind, not the body." "Which causes less suffering?" Torres asked. "Breaking someone's spirit or breaking their bones. Both end the fight. One requires medical treatment. The other requires time and understanding. You tell me which is worse." The students debated this for weeks. There were no easy answers. By the 4th month, something unexpected was happening. Students from different species were working together, combining their natural abilities with human tactical flexibility. A joint exercise paired Kresh with a human marine and a Vexian cluster. Their mission was to retake a facility from enemy forces. The Krythax officer provided frontline combat power. The human provided tactical coordination and technology. The Vexian provided reconnaissance and overwhelming numbers when needed. They completed the mission in half the expected time. "This is what the coalition should be," Kresh said afterward. "Each species contributing what they do best, coordinated by human doctrine." In the 5th month, students learned the hardest lesson of all: restraint. Knowing how to kill gradually or quickly is not enough, Chen Wei told the class. You must also know when not to kill at all, when to negotiate, when to retreat, when to accept a less-than-perfect victory to save lives. He showed them footage from Earth's history. Wars that could have been avoided, battles that shouldn't have been fought, victories that cost more than they were worth. "We have made every mistake you can make in warfare," Chen admitted. "We have fought unnecessary wars. We have killed when we should have talked. We have chosen pride over peace. That's why we can teach you now. Because we learned these lessons the hard way." Counselor Mira Esh attended one of these lectures. Afterward, she approached Chen privately. "I was wrong about your species," she said quietly. "I thought your methods were cruel. But I understand now. You are not cruel. You are careful. You have studied violence so thoroughly that you know exactly how much to use and when to stop." "We had to learn," Chen said. "We fought ourselves for so long that we either had to master war or be destroyed by it. We chose to master it." "And now you teach others to master it as well," Mira Esh observed. "Is that wise? What if we turn these lessons against you?" Chen smiled. "Then we'll adapt again. That's what we do." The 6th and final month culminated in a massive war game. All 300 students were divided into teams and given a complex scenario. A hostile force was threatening a multi-species colony. Each team had to develop and execute a response plan. Kresh's team chose a combined approach. They used psychological warfare to weaken enemy morale, followed by a rapid strike to neutralize the threat, and ended with diplomatic outreach to prevent future conflicts. It was neither purely gradual nor purely quick, but a mixture of both. They won the exercise. At the graduation ceremony, General Thorvax addressed the students. "You came here from 40 different worlds, 40 different species, 40 different military traditions. You leave here as something new, not as humans, but as officers who understand human thinking. You will return to your fleets and your armies, and you will change how the coalition fights." Chen Wei stood beside Thorvax and looked out at the graduates. Among them were former enemies, now becoming the coalition's best defenders. Kresh approached after the ceremony. "Ambassador Chen, I have a question." "Go ahead." "You taught us to kill gradually or quickly, but which way is the human way? Which one do you prefer?" Chen looked at the young Krythax officer. He thought about Captain Okonkwo and her 3-month campaign of psychological warfare. He thought about Colonel Davidson and his 18-hour blitz at Helios 7th. He thought about 10,000 years of human warfare, all the different methods, all the different philosophies. "Neither," Chen said finally. "The human way is reluctantly. We prefer not to fight at all. But when we must fight, we choose the method that ends it quickly or slowly, based on what will save the most lives and achieve lasting peace. The method doesn't matter. The outcome does." Kresh nodded slowly. That is wisdom. Later that night, Chen stood on a balcony overlooking the academy grounds. Above, stars filled the sky. Human ships patrolled Coalition space now, bearing both Earth's flag and the Coalition symbol. Former enemies trained together. Former rivals shared knowledge. His communicator chimed. It was Captain Okonkwo. "Sir, we have a situation developing on the outer colonies. Looks like raiders, not a major threat. How should we respond?" Chen considered. A year ago, the Coalition would have debated for days about the proper response. Now they had options. "Assess the situation," Chen ordered. "If you can resolve it without violence, do so. If you can't, use whatever method achieves the objective with minimal casualties." "Gradual or quick, sir?" "Whatever works, Captain. That's the whole point." He closed the channel and looked back at the stars. The galaxy had learned that humans could kill gradually or quickly. They had learned that humans were versatile, adaptable, and very effective at warfare. But more importantly, they had learned that humans chose to be protectors instead of conquerors. That humans studied war not to wage it, but to prevent it. That the species most capable of violence was also most committed to peace, and that, Chen thought, was the real lesson. Not how to kill, but why to choose not to. Not the methods of warfare, but the wisdom of restraint. The question had been, how do humans kill? The answer had been, gradually or quickly. But the truth, the deeper truth that the galaxy was only beginning to understand, was that humans killed reluctantly. And when given the choice between war and peace, they chose peace every time. That was what made them dangerous, and that was what made them valuable. The species that had mastered every form of warfare had also mastered the most important skill of all, knowing when not to use it. And in a galaxy full of warriors who only knew one way to fight, that made humanity exactly what the Coalition needed.